There's been a lot of speculation and criticism of the potential long-term success of Game Pass. I actually think it has the possibility of going all the way and becoming wildly successful, maybe even transforming the industry and eventually becoming the norm of buying games, but it still has a long way to go. But for this strategy to work, it needs to play the long game and hold out as long as it can to get enough subscribers to support itself, a challenge that other streamers like Netflix and HBO Max still haven't been able to solve. On top of that, Microsoft is also aggressively buying out as much of the industry as possible with incredibly expensive acquisitions like Bethesda and Activision. Any other company would have gone bankrupt long ago. Now, this might not be such a huge problem. Microsoft is so massive that it can basically set the GDP of a small nation on fire every single month and have that not really affect its bottom line. But how long can this really last? I think that despite this, Game Pass eventually has the possibility of becoming a success. For one, games as a service is a much more sticky business model than any other type of streaming service. What I mean by sticky is that there's so much more incentives to stay subscribed for a longer period of time compared to those services that focus on television or movies, because gaming inherently takes much more time to play and finish every new experience. For example, I played Ghost of Tsushima for a bit on the new PlayStation Plus with the intent of finishing it in just a month between work and other commitments. Now that I got into it and I know the game is very big, I know it's going to take me at least 3 or 4 to get all the way through. I'll end up having to spend $80 on PlayStation rather than just the cost of the game itself. Lots of modern games are designed like this. They stretch them out for as long as possible, which is perfect when it's hosted on a streaming service. Compare that to a series on Netflix, which usually takes only about 9 hours and it can be completed over a single weekend. Why stay subscribed after finishing the latest Netflix piece of shit when the next season won't be out for a whole year? Retaining subscribers is the most difficult thing to do for a streaming service, and Game Pass naturally has an edge over all of its competitors. It's also incredibly annoying to move on to any other service once you're comfortable with the one that you're already on. I have my whole library and gaming history on PlayStation, and I don't really want to move on to something else. A lot of gamers are the same. Just look at how reluctant people are to using the Epic Store, despite it constantly offering free games all the time because they're already tied up with Steam. Or how many people hate using proprietary launchers like Uplay and the ill-fated Bethesda launcher. If Game Pass can just convince gamers to use their service first, it can do a lot to help retain them over the long haul because they'll be reluctant to leave once they're already embedded. And this is added by Xbox itself. Xbox does not want you to buy your games, it wants you to use Game Pass. This is why you get several months of Game Pass up front whenever you buy an Xbox, and it's why you're flooded with ads every time you start the console up. If you start using Game Pass and you have an Xbox, you've basically locked yourself into the service for life. It's impossible to move on. Otherwise, that expensive piece of plastic and silicone you have next to your TV is functionally worthless. You need to stay subscribed to justify its existence. The Xbox Series X has sold about 13 million units, and at the moment it's pretty on par with PlayStation 5, at least for now. All of these sales are basically guaranteed Game Pass subscribers. If Series X can keep selling more units, it can create a much more resilient subscriber base than any of the other services have, which is its path to long-term sustainability and success. So I think this creates a pretty good foundation for Game Pass eventually working out as a streaming service for Microsoft. But it still has a long way to go. We won't know for sure until it eventually happens. Microsoft will need to keep pumping money into the service without seeing a profit for the foreseeable future. But with the global economy entering a bear market, geopolitical tensions making international sales more difficult than ever, and the growing competition from PlayStation, Nintendo, and Steam, it's also completely likely that Microsoft might end up seeing this as too big a risk and eventually pull the plug. Only time will tell.